Okay, so Emma, if I was pitching this as a business proposition, what is it that the company does? What would I be pitching? Help me out here.
Okay, so we offer um, live role play training. So that means using actors to bring situations and scenarios to life. So for any industry or any professional individual that needs to practice their interpersonal skills in a safe place, so that you can get things wrong, make mistakes, we can plug into that training and actually give the delegates, the participants, the students, whoever's doing the training, an actual opportunity to test out those skills. So, for example, if it was a trainee doctor, our actors would play patients, and we can actually facilitate a role play workshop so that those trainee doctors are practicing those skills. The beauty of role play is you can stop it, you can start it, you can make mistakes, you can open up for discussion and
Hmm.
really develop that practical application of skills. Because there's one thing learning about these things theoretically, and another thing actually doing it. And so it's
Aye, that's true.
all about the doing.
Yeah, okay, yeah, you can read about baking a cake, but until you bake that cake, you just don't know if you can bake it, right?
Exactly.
So I'm looking at all the people you've worked with. How do you work with the Red Cross then, for example? What's that about? Like how do you role play? What, you stage a war? Like how does that work?
Not well, not quite, but it's in yeah, it's right to look at all the different people we work with, because there's no two contracts that we have that are ever the same. We work in a
So
completely
you're bespoke.
totally bespoke in the truest sense of the word, because we don't really believe in having a load of kind of role play workshops on the shelf that we sort of reel out again and again.
Okay.
It has to be so tailored to each client that we work with, each organization, each culture. So for the British Red Cross, we've worked with them for many years to simulate some sort of international crisis, maybe a
Oh my God. So you
terror.
really do a war then? Like
Well,
what
yeah,
happens?
it's very subtle and very complex, but this is training for the British Red Cross volunteers, who are extraordinary individuals who give up chunks of their year to be on roster. So at any point they could be, airdropped into a sudden, crisis that has arisen anywhere in the world.
Say
And
Yemen, it'd be Yemen at the moment,
right,
right?
exactly that. A terrorist attack or a natural disaster, a tsunami, and often not know what they're going to face. Now, how on earth do you prepare for that sort of eventuality?
I don't know. I mean, is that where role play? Is that what you're saying? That's where
Well,
role play
exactly, it's one part of
comes
the
in.
training. I'm not suggesting it is enough to train every aspect of that, but yes, we do this huge event every year in a big conference centre near Gatwick Airport, where I take about 60 to 100 actors.
Oh
Uh,
wow. Okay, that's a lot of actors.
we take over the building and we simulate a very kind of detailed real time role play that lasts a whole day. So the British Red Cross volunteers who are there to kind of train and develop their skills are literally deployed into a room for 20 minutes at a time, and they don't know what they're going to meet. So in that room might be 20 actors in varying degrees of distress and trauma, and those actors have been worked with in detail to develop a whole backstory. They are in character all day. So as far as the volunteers are concerned, they are working with real people, and that again is another big asset of role play, that it's a fantastic training to really invest your mind into, because those actors are giving you a totally authentic portrayal, or as close to a authentic portrayal as you can manage. So they get to actually kind of come into that room, deal with whatever they're dealing with, and then have a chance to stop and say, gosh, how was that, and would I do anything differently? And then in that case, the feedback is given by the actors. That was brilliant the way you did that, actually you could have asked me that question. So they get a chance to actually practice those skills in a really live way.
Your company, if I'm right, has been going for 20 years. So presumably it works. Help me out here. So what is the feedback like from an event like that then? They've had a chance to sort of practice, what would happen if they walked into a chaotic situation. What is the feedback from the delegates?
It's really profound, actually. I think across the board, and whether we've worked for the NHS, we've got a big contract with an ambulance service at the moment, that the work is always described as quite transformational. Um,
Wow, that's a really powerful word.
and empowering. So, I know that feedback from some of the volunteers, the British Red Cross volunteers, said that had I not had done this training, I would have not had nearly as much confidence to then go, be deployed to
Oh, okay, that really is.
afterwards. And it's like anything, isn't it? If we've practiced something, if we've had a chance to actually run it through, get it wrong, make mistakes, improve our practice, we're all going to be infinitely better at that skill, aren't we? So it is about
Yeah, so I really see what you're saying now. It's like the role play fills the gap of real life, because I'm guessing if you're a trainee, I don't know, psychologist or psychiatrist, they're not going to let you loose on patients straight away, right? So how do you learn? How do you learn how to deal with it? Say you have a patient that's had a psychotic breakdown, for example. How do you learn how to deal with that? Like, it's like baking a cake without baking a cake,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
So if I'm understanding you correctly, role play bridges that
It's
gap.
exactly that. So, we've been working with trainee psychologists and psychiatrists for 20 years, actually,
Oh wow, okay, I didn't
during
realize.
during their training. And exactly that they may well be going out on placement as part of their course, but they're coming back into the classroom and needing to thrash out and practice. And actually, another real asset of it is that they're doing it in a kind of workshop setting with their peers, with their fellow students. So they're also benefiting from watching good practice. And we all know that we do things in different ways, right? So your way of doing something will be different to mine, so there'll be things that can be gleaned and learned from other people. And that's a really fantastic um, way of psychologists being able to, it's a bit like GPs. They never know who's going to come through the door, and we do something
Right.
similar where we create a kind of series of scenarios where clients will come in 10-minute bursts for consultations, and the psychologist has to sort of manage what's in front of them. And it's not designed to catch them out, but it is authenticating a real life experience. And we research very carefully. I was contracted to do a project for an acute mental health service, and I spent 2 weeks on the wards talking to patients
Oh,
before I
okay.
could develop the scenarios and work with the actors and get them to kind of try and authenticate that.
When
We
you say authenticate, what do you mean? Do you mean like you give the actors advice on a variety of different ways to respond depending on what the psychologist says to them, or?
So, I mean, a really great role player will be a very responsive, attuned actor. So they'll have a brief, they don't work off a script. So, say you're playing, I don't know, a patient in a mental acute ward. They'll have a brief, they'll know the backstory, but then they'll really work to put truth into that story. And they will come into the role play with the trainee psychologist or psychiatrist. And yes, they'll have their brief, but actually the real skill lies in how well they respond to whatever they're given. So if they've got a trainee in front of them who's making them feel very comfortable to speak, to share, then they will do that. Equally, if the trainee is making the character feel defensive or awkward, then they won't reveal as much. So it's a really great live
So
response.
is it interactive?
It
Can,
totally.
can you can you give us an example of one? Like one character like that?
We have a very detailed case study that we use for one of our trainee psychologist departments. So it's a school of psychology at a university, and we have a very um, all-encompassing role play that involves all the different people surrounding a particular 12-year-old child. So it's a child psychology scenario. Um, and there's different characters in the story, if you like. There's the mother and the social worker and the school and the hospital, and the trainee psychologist has to meet each person in
Oh, so like a what they call an MDT, like an MDT, like a
like a multidisciplinary meet. Yeah, that's how
right.
it might end up. So they meet them one by one, and have to really practice those skills of objectivity and listening and hearing all the different perspectives of the
Right.
case. And then
So it's not just they meet the patient, they meet what the social worker makes of the, right, okay, that is in depth.
And that's all played by actors. And you asked for an example, so I'm thinking of one of the characters in that role in that study is a mother who is terrified of authority, doesn't really know the fullness of the problem with her own child, is very, very nervous about coming into a meeting with a psychologist. Now, she's got her own tragic story about her husband having committed suicide, and there was, it's a really complex story there. Now, if she's not handled correctly by the trainee psychologist, she will just shut down and say nothing. However,
and you can imagine that happening absolutely in real life.
Yeah. And equally, if the psychologist reads those signals and adapts their style and puts that woman at her ease and asks her the right questions, the actor will then respond accordingly, and everything will come out, which will be so valuable for the whole story, because actually we then find out about her trauma, about secrets she's kept from her child, about a whole, so it's like a dominoes effect.
Right.
It really is the most kind of
in depth. I had no idea it was that complex and in depth.
I guess the power of it is that you can then truly see how the role of that psychologist can make or break a situation, that they've got the golden key to unlock those truths if handled in the right way. So these are all human, personal, nuanced interpersonal skills that personally I feel like you can only really practice them by doing them. You can't read a chapter in a book about
well, they are such practical skills, and no wonder what you're doing is so bespoke then, because that's it. Everybody's going to want something. I don't know, you might be working with adults, dementia, young people, like you say, Red Cross, could be terrorist,
Exactly. And that's, the thrill of the work I get to do is that I get to jump in and out of all these different environments and cultures and people.
So what do? You go and meet the people and say, look, what do you need?
Yeah, so there would be a sort of initial meeting, a discussion, and we'd find out what the training requirement is, what the training objective is. It might be, at the moment I'm working with the ambulance service, and there's a project on compassionate leadership. So I've designed a role play scenario that plugs into that particular objective. And then I would find the right actors. I develop the brief. This would all be in consultation with the client. So we go back and forth. If they're happy with this, does this feel like a good fit? And then if it's all looking like it's a good fit, we go ahead. And actually now, in these crazy times we're in, we've been doing it all virtually on Zoom.
And who runs? You do it and then give it to the people and they run it, or
it depends on the client. Lots of people quite like us or me to come in and facilitate. Others are happy for me to do all the design work at the front end, and then off they go, and the actors turn up either on screen or in the room, and it runs itself. And it's a collaboration though. So if I was to work with the British Red Cross, I'd be partnering the people running that course. I don't necessarily take over. We're not experts, psychologists, doctors, lawyers. We are working in tandem with the people training in those fields.
So it's bespoke right down to how the workshop is facilitated, for want of a better word. Absolutely. So it's bespoke in the sense that you can make it all and give it to them, or you can make it all and run it for them, or...
Yeah, I mean, I have some contracts running where, I've got a contract running for a law school with trainee barristers, where they literally just want actors to turn up and be in the witness box so that the barristers can practice cross.
Oh, okay, yeah.
That doesn't need anything from me at all. I'm equally facilitating training for mediators, actually, where I need to be there ready to stop and start the training, facilitate a discussion in the room. So again, there's no one size fits all. It adapts.
So your company's uber flexible, basically, is what I'm hearing from you.
Exactly that. And that's what I really love about the work, is that, we get to really tune into what people need.
Thank you for explaining that, because I've heard, like, I know friends that went to drama school and they do the odd bit of role play, and I'll be honest with you, I thought, is it like murder mystery? I don't know. I didn't really know anything about it at all. So that's a really kind of specialized, bespoke service.
Yeah, it is indeed. Thank you for your questions.
Yeah, no, thank you for explaining it to me. Good luck with it all.
Thank you very much.